Welcome to the deep dive. It was 9 years ago yesterday, July 12th, 2016, that this huge ruling came down from an international arbitral tribunal, really cast a decisive shadow over the South China Sea.
Absolutely. And fast forward to today, July 13th, 2025, and things are, well, anything but quiet. We're hearing reports about both U.S. and Chinese aircraft carriers operating there simultaneously.
Right, and wasn't the USS George Washington just in Manila, like right around July 4th, fresh off a refit, too?
Exactly. Pulled in on the 4th, it sends a pretty clear signal, doesn't it? It's a vivid picture of how these long simmering tensions are still playing out very much in real time.
So that's what we're diving into today. We're going to, pull back the layers on these incredibly complex South China Sea issues.
Yeah, we'll look at China's historical claims, especially that infamous nine-dash line, and how its neighbors and the wider world have reacted.
And crucially, placing it all in that bigger picture of U.S.-China competition in the Indo-Pacific.
Our mission really is to get at the historical roots, the legal fights, the strategy behind the moves.
And even some of those, frankly, surprising comments coming from within China itself about the whole thing.
Right. We're trying to understand not just what's happening, but why it matters so much. And we've got quite a stack of sources, old maps, military reports, legal docs. Should be fascinating.
Definitely. So let's start with that legal cornerstone you mentioned earlier, the 2016 arbitral award. That seems central.
It really is. This tribunal, set up under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea and NCLS, it ruled overwhelmingly for the Philippines on most points.
Okay, so given all the current activity, the carriers and everything, what did that 2016 ruling actually say that made it such a game changer?
Well, the key finding was pretty blunt. China had not exercised exclusive historical control over the waters inside that nine-dash line.
No historical control.
Right. And crucially, it said China had no legal basis. Those were the words to claim historic rights to resources there.
Wow.
So the ruling made it crystal clear. Any Chinese claims inside the nine-dash line have no lawful effect beyond what NCLS itself grants them, like any other coastal state.
Okay, pretty unambiguous. So China's reaction, how did they take such a direct ruling?
Oh, the rejection was immediate and total. Xi Jinping himself said China's sovereignty and marine rights will not be affected by it. Full stop.
And didn't they sort of preempt this years earlier?
They did. You have to remember, back in 2006, China explicitly opted out of UN Silohesa's compulsory arbitration mechanism for these kinds of disputes. So they'd already signaled they wouldn't necessarily play ball with this sort of ruling.
Right, but for the Philippines, it's the complete opposite, isn't it? They've really held on to this award.
Absolutely. They've called it a definitive triumph of reason over force and of rules over coercion. It's foundational for them.
Foundational.
Yeah. Their Department of Foreign Affairs, the DFA, just put out a statement late May this year pushing back on some Chinese comments about Pagasa Island.
Yeah.
And they strongly reaffirmed the award's validity.
So no wiggle room from their perspective.
None. They keep saying it's final, beyond compromise, and not something that changes just because governments change. It's their North Star, as they put it, a permanent guide.
Okay, so that's the legal reality, according to the tribunal. But how did this whole nine-dash line concept even start? Beijing claims it goes back to ancient times, but the history seems different.
It does seem different, yeah. While you hear the ancient times claim a lot, the first time you see something like a line drawn on a map is actually much, much later. We're talking the 1930s.
The 1930s. Not ancient.
Not ancient, no. It seems to have been a reaction partly to France annexing the Spratly Islands back then.
Ah, okay.
And then it really took shape on an official map published in 1947 by the Republic of China government, the one that later moved to Taiwan. That map showed a U-shaped line, but with 11 dashes.
11 dashes, right. And that was post-World War II.
Yeah, just after the war, when Taiwan had been returned to Chinese sovereignty.
So the 1947 map had 11 dashes. How did it become 9? Did the PRC change it?
It did. The PRC, the People's Republic, reduced it to 9 dashes in 1952. Apparently, this happened after some negotiations with Vietnam about the Gulf of Tonkin.
Interesting. And you mentioned maps earlier. It's fascinating how maps aren't just neutral pictures of the world, are they?
Not at all. They carry assumptions, perspectives. Traditional Chinese maps, for instance, were quite different from the European style, with latitude and longitude, that Matteo Ricci introduced way back in 1602.
So they reflect different ways of seeing space.
Exactly. Maps are tools, but they're also statements. It's interesting, there's this landmark on Hainan Island, the pillar of the southern sky, Nantian-Yizu. It's even on their 2 yuan banknote.
Right.
And it kind of symbolizes China's traditional southernmost point.
Yeah.
But translating that local symbolic marker into a claim over vast stretches of open ocean thousands of kilometers away, that's a huge leap.
A leap that China's neighbors haven't been willing to make, I take it?
Definitely not. The reaction from neighbors like the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, even Indonesia,
Mm-hmm.
has been pretty consistent rejection.
Indonesia, too, even though they aren't claiming the islands themselves.
That's right. President Jokowi, back in 2015, stated very clearly that Indonesia sees China's nine-dash line as having no legal basis in international law. That's quite a statement coming from a non-claimant state, and it reflects a broad regional consensus.
Okay, so widespread international pushback. But what really caught my eye was hearing about criticism inside China. People online actually questioning this huge national claim. That seems surprising.
It is surprising and really fascinating. You stumble across these comments on Chinese internet forums sometimes, and they can be incredibly frank.
Like what? What are they actually saying?
Well, one person put it pretty bluntly, even so, it's ridiculous that China mixes EEZ and territorial waters,
Yeah.
conflating resource rights with full sovereignty.
That's a fairly sophisticated legal point for a random comment.
It is. Another one was more practical, saying something like, look, it's enough to get jurisdiction over the islands and the waters right around them. You don't need to block the whole main road and act like it's your backyard telling everyone to stay out.
Block the main road. I like that analogy.
Yeah. And some were even more direct, just saying, it is certainly at fault in the South China Sea. Just flat out.
Wow. That level of internal critique is unexpected. Does it go further?
Well, there was this one comment that really struck me. Someone lamented, Chinese people, when it comes to international issues, often say fist is truth. Then why have a Ministry of Foreign Affairs? Why bother with the UN? It's just a waste of money.
That cuts deep. Questioning the whole point of diplomacy if might makes right.
Exactly. It shows this tension, this sort of contradiction bubbling under the surface. Now, of course, you absolutely see the opposite, too.
Right, the defenders.
Yeah, people saying, I think there's no problem with claiming the South China Sea, Vietnam is just as shameless, or pointing out, if big fists are the rule, well, the U.S. has the biggest fist out there. So it's definitely not monolithic. It's a real mixed bag of opinions.
A very complex internal picture. Okay, let's zoom out again to that wider competition, particularly the U.S. role. We hear a lot about the U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy. What's the core idea there?
The main goal is promoting what they call a free and open Indo-Pacific. That means aiming for a region that's better connected, more prosperous, secure, and resilient.
And how do they try to achieve that?
It's multi-pronged. Strengthening old alliances, building new partnerships, think the Quad, for instance, and investing in regional bodies like ASEAN. It's about building collective strength, really.
And a big part of that is the military dimension, the deterrence aspect, like that USS George Washington visit we mentioned earlier.
For sure. As one analyst put it, that port call sends a message. We are here, we stand by our ally, and we are not intimidated. It's about presence and reassurance.
But there's a numbers game too, right? The U.S. has more carriers overall, but where are they when it matters?
That's a key point. Sources do suggest while the U.S. Navy is larger globally, its carriers can be spread thin because of commitments elsewhere.
So capacity versus presence?
Kind of. There was that specific period recently where reports indicated China had 3 carriers active in the broader region, while the U.S. didn't have any right there in the immediately contested waters. So the picture on the ground, or rather at sea, can fluctuate quite a bit.
Interesting. And it looks like the Philippines isn't just waiting for the U.S. cavalry either. They're building other connections.
They absolutely are. Diversifying their security partnerships seems key to their strategy now.
How so?
Well, joint exercises involving not just the U.S., but also Australia and Japan. Some are calling it a new Quad in that context. They're talking with Japan about letting troops access each other's territory, and they're getting significant hardware from India, like those BrahMos anti-ship missiles.
The BrahMos, right? That's a serious capability boost.
It is. It shows they're actively seeking ways to bolster their own defense, not just rely on alliances.
Now, what about those gray zone tactics we keep seeing? The water cannons, the boat ramming, like that incident back in March 2024 that injured Filipino sailors. How do you even counter that kind of stuff?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's designed to be below the threshold of an armed attack, but the Philippines is trying to address it. One major effort is looking at their mutual defense treaty with the U.S. They want to try and update it to specifically define some of these gray zone actions as constituting an armed attack.
Ah, so it would trigger the treaty obligations.
That seems to be the idea. And crucially, they might want it to cover attacks on civilian vessels too, like those resupply boats going to Second Thomas Shoal, not just military ships. Closing that loophole could be a significant deterrent.
That makes sense. Shifting gears slightly, let's talk about the military balance overall. China's PLA has poured tons of money into modernization, new ships, new missiles.
It's visually very impressive, no doubt. The spending, the hardware development.
But there seems to be real skepticism among analysts about how ready they actually are for a high-end fight, say, against the U.S. military. What's driving that doubt?
There are a few key factors analysts point to. One is human capital, reportedly. The PLA struggles to recruit and retain the kind of highly skilled personnel you need for modern warfare.
Okay, talent issues. What else?
There's a structural aspect, too. The PLA's primary mission, fundamentally, is ensuring the Communist Party stays in power. That means loyalty can often trump merit in promotions and assignments, which might not always lead to the most effective fighting force.
Politics over pure military effectiveness.
Potentially, yes. And then there's just the lack of recent combat experience. The PLA hasn't fought a major conflict since its border war with Vietnam back in 1979. That's almost half a century ago.
And wasn't there that really alarming report about their missile forces, something about water?
Yes, that was quite shocking. During some recent anti-corruption purges targeting the PLA rocket force leadership, reports emerged suggesting investigators found some ICBM silos, intercontinental ballistic missiles,
Yeah.
where the missiles were apparently filled with water instead of actual rocket fuel.
Water. Seriously.
Seriously. Now, that's not just a minor technical glitch. If true, it points to potentially massive systemic problems, corruption, lack of readiness, maybe even just incompetence right at the heart of their strategic forces.
That completely changes the perception of their capabilities, doesn't it?
It really does. It suggests that all the shiny new hardware, like their YJ-21 hypersonic missile, might not tell the whole story. There could be deep internal weaknesses when it comes to actual operational effectiveness and the quality of their personnel.
So a gap between appearance and reality, perhaps.
Perhaps. China, of course, maintains its military buildup, including those artificial islands in the South China Sea, is purely for self-defense against perceived threats from, quote, super powerful military aircraft and warships.
Right. Now, beyond the military chess game, there's the economic and diplomatic side, too. China's Belt and Road Initiative, especially the maritime part, that's an attempt to build influence differently, right? Through economics.
Precisely. It's about weaving stronger economic ties across the region, which China might hope could, soften some of these political and territorial disputes over time, build interdependence.
And what about diplomacy directly on the South China Sea issue? There have been talks about a code of conduct, a COC, for years.
Yes, the COC negotiations between China and ASEAN are ongoing. China has publicly aimed to finalize it, and some analysts suggest Beijing sees the COC process as a way to downplay the 2016 arbitration ruling, and importantly, to try and exclude external powers, meaning primarily the U.S., from regional maritime affairs.
While the U.S. approaches.
The U.S. tends to work through existing multilateral forums, emphasizes freedom of navigation, and consistently points back to the 2016 arbitral award as the legitimate basis for resolving disputes under international law. So, two quite different visions for how the region should be governed.
So pulling this all together, what does it mean for you listening? It means the South China Sea situation is just incredibly complicated and constantly shifting.
You've got these deep historical claims bumping up against international law. You've got rapid military modernization, meeting questions about actual readiness, regional alliances forming and reforming.
All playing out under the shadow of this major U.S.-China competition.
And for countries like the Philippines, that 2016 ruling remains their anchor, their North Star. They see it as championing reason over rashness, law over disorder, amity over ambition.
And their responses, and those of others in the region, aren't just about military posturing. It's legal, it's diplomatic, increasingly technological, too.
Absolutely. Understanding this really delicate balance.
Yep.
The legal frameworks, the military strengths, but also the potential weaknesses, agree zone tactics, the internal pressures. It's all crucial for making sense of this vital and, frankly, quite volatile part of our interconnected world. It's a dynamic we'll be watching closely.